Okay, let's kick off. So we've spoke about white boxing, grey boxing, blocking out whatever, and the importance of that. And now we're actually going to get in there and start modelling some stuff. And we're going to start really simple at first. We've already looked at the overview of the modelling process as it relates to obviously getting your concept, um, understanding the basic primitives, and setting up, making, refining, detailing, all that kind of jazz. Going from the basic, the big, to the small, the detail. What we're going to do now is basically start off this whole process of making this environment, because obviously in this whole module we are making an environment, a simple environment. This isn't an environment modeling specialist class, but we're using an environment to understand the modeling process. And we're going to start off with the simplest part, and it's the blackout phase, but we're making the walls, the floors, the roofs, windows, doors, pillars, anything like that, any of the big stuff, the stuff that actually makes an environment stand up. We're actually building an environment as we would do in the real world. We're also going to start looking more into modular modeling in a basic level. Again, all this stuff, it's not a environmental specialist modeling class, but doing this process does help you understand the whole modeling process. So, before we actually jump in, that's why I've got a talking head, big camera here. You've got to start off simple with this kind of stuff. You can't end up going in, doing all the detailing, just kind of winging it. You can do that with drawing, you can do that with sculpting, but with modeling, polymodeling, there is an amount of setup, pre-understanding, questioning, analyzing, all this kind of stuff. Once you get really good at doing this, once you get comfortable with it, you can be a little bit more freer and a little bit more kind of like freeform with it. So at the beginning, this might feel a little bit restrictive and it might feel a little bit boring. I think it's amazing. I love this kind of stuff. Obviously, it's why I do it as a career. That's why I teach it as well. But you've just got to bear with it for the beginning, because there is this learning curve with 3D. With 2D, with drawing in general, you pick up a thing, don't matter what it is, you pick up a thing, and then you put that thing to paper and then start moving around, and then you start drawing. Boom. And you can start doing whatever, and it's very free. And because of the whole, fundamental foundation of drawing, anything can happen on a page, anything can be produced on a page. You can bend all the rules on a page. There are thousands and thousands of rules when it comes to drawing. Color theory, structure, form, composition, perspective, storytelling, narrative, all these kind of things. But because of the general nature of 2D, they're all incredibly malleable. They're all incredibly, flexible. In 3D, there's very few rules. There's actually very few rules. There's about 50 rules, I'd say. But they're all incredibly strict. Because if you get any of them wrong, it's either the model might just look rubbish, or the model might look good but not be usable, because the behind the scenes information, the structure that we don't generally see in games, the structure, skeleton of the mesh of the object, isn't good enough. It's going to cause issues in the mesh, issues in the engine, or it's going to break. Put into an engine, the engine's just going to say, nah, I'm not having that. All the way to the way that we produce the textures, the way that we produce what we call UVs, the way that we actually name things, the way we deal with data, all these things that, again, on the beginning of it, at the beginning, might seem like really boring and kind of very restrictive. But this is the nature of the beast. But once you get past that, and it's very easy to get past it, it's just a lot of remembering, a lot of asking yourself questions. Once you get past that, it's really simple. And then you'll figure out how to be more malleable with the rules, bend the rules, break the rules, once you know the rules. I can happily say, hand on heart, that you can give me pretty much anything to model, and I can model it well in a very, 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 very well in a very, very short amount of time. And I'm breaking a lot of rules. I'm making a mess at first, but then I'm fixing it up later on, because I understand how this stuff works. I understand how to make a mess and then clean it up. But at the beginning, we're going to be very strict. We're going to be very careful with what we're doing. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to make a lot of notes. We're going to go back and re-look and ask ourselves all this kind of stuff. And then eventually it's going to start clicking in. But you'll also be looking at a lot of grey boxes at the beginning. You'll be looking at a lot of placeholder textures, placeholder geometry. And it might seem like, again, a bit boring at first, because you're just looking at a bit of grey boxes with blue lines on them. But very quickly, things will start to kind of come to the front. Things will start to make sense. Things will start to look really good, especially when you start getting stuff into the engine, and especially when we start looking into texturing and the cool things we can do in texturing. If anyone is into puzzles, 3D is... I suspect that 3D is going to be cool for you. I love puzzles. I think puzzles is one of the best things you can do as well. You know, we all play games. Play a puzzle game. Don't just play shooters. Don't just play Rocket League or stuff. Find some puzzle games. Find some like hidden object games. Go do Sudoku. Go do word searches. Go do all that kind of stuff, because all this is about shapes and about patterns, and it's about understanding all this stuff. It's problem solving. We're going to have a lot of problems. And when I say problems, I don't mean things that are going to stop us working. It's more like, I have to model this thing. How am I going to model it? What are the things I need to do? That's my problem. Problem in like the mathematical equation sense. That's a problem to solve kind of thing. There is a little bit of maths involved, but the maths is actually quite simple. There's a few mathematical theories we have to know about, but again, really simple. Stuff that we would have done in high school and college and that kind of stuff. So, the things we will need is, obviously, ourselves. I do always encourage some kind of, especially when it's cold at the minute, some sort of warm beverage. A snack or two. Music in the background while you're working, obviously not when you're in lectures or when you're watching these videos, but you know, something to listen to, because this can be a long process. Also, stuff to take notes with. I like myself some hard copy note taking. I basically use 1 million trees a year making notes. I like writing stuff down. It also means that I can draw stuff out. You'll hear me say quite a lot, when in doubt, draw it out. Not everything can be solved in the engine or in Maya or Blender. You know, maybe you just have to go away and grab a pencil or a pen and actually draw out the thing you want to make. Draw out the wireframe, draw out the UV, whatever, and then that might help you, you know. So cool. So we're going to jump into Maya now, and we're going to do a bit of setup as well, because we're taking stuff from Maya and we're taking it into Unreal. That's easy enough. That's dead simple. But what we take out of Maya is important, and how we take it out and to what size we take it out is important. Basically, to what size we build stuff. So, let me just shrink my head into the bottom left. Let me just make it a bit smaller. Like that, so I'll put myself there. Get used to seeing my face in videos. There we go. So, again, welcome to Maya. You've watched the... I know you've watched it because I put them up, so we've all watched them. We don't have to go over the UI of Maya anymore. I've already talked about the unit size within Maya, but I'll refresh ourselves again. So, this is the grid inside Maya. It's changeable, we're going to change it in a bit, but this is the grid inside Maya, the standard grid. It's made up of little squares in a 4-quadrant setup like this. So, this is basically the middle of the world. The middle where this purple, I've made mine purple, but you can change these colours in the settings. The middle of this line here, going through the middle, that's the 0 of the world. And then you've got 4 quadrants. You've got if we look at the, oh, it is actually behind my head, so I will move myself to down here for now. Bottom left of the screen, you've obviously got our little axis gimbal. So, make it a bit light so you can see, there you go. So the blue, the Z-axis, that's the forward axis. So, in relation to the grid, there we go. In relation to the grid here, this, in this direction, that's positive Z. Behind it, going in that direction, negative Z. We look here again, X. Well, X is facing in, kind of going down. There you go. There you go. That down in that direction. So this down here is positive X. This over here is negative X. And then if we were to have a vertical grid section, we would also have the Y-axis. Again, Y upwards, positive Y. Y downwards, negative Y. So in Maya, that's how the axes work. In Unreal, it's 2 of the axes are flipped, which is common between softwares. It's just something you got to get used to. X is always the same. Basically, Z and Y get flipped. So, why that's important? Because we're going to be starting changing some of the parameters of this, and we've got to think about this as this isn't one grid. This is a grid made up of 4 subgrids. So, you'll get it eventually. Each one of these grids, by standard, each one of these quadrants is made up of 12 by 12, or 12 squared. So that bit of maths in here. 12 squared, meaning we've got 2 axes. 12 little squares. So there's 12 go in this direction, there's 12 go in this direction. Each one of these squares is a centimeter. That's the native unit working of Maya. It's a centimeter. Each one of these things here is a centimeter. And that means that when we have an object in the scene and we have transforms here, so if I set this to 0, it's currently in the middle of the world. If I move this +1 in the x-axis, it moves an entire unit over to the right, or left or right, depending on how you're looking at it. So if I was to do this 0, pardon for that little skip, there appeared to be a little bit of a thing in the recording that kind of messed up. So as I was saying, if we were to put 0.5, sorry, inside there, then it moves over a half unit, which is brilliant. This is all very, very important. Obviously, I forget what I've just said in the previous video because I've literally recorded about half an hour after that and realised that the video had stopped recording. But the units inside Maya, they're a centimetre. Each one of these little squares here is a centimetre. The units inside Unreal are also a centimetre, which is really great because it means that between Maya and Unreal, we're not going to have any discrepancies of scale or size or anything like that. The only difference is the working units in here are a centimetre, but the working units inside of Unreal are more like a metre. Unless you specifically tell it to move and scale in smaller increments. But that's great because a metre is literally just 100 centimetres. So that's easy. And that's only really important when it comes to things like things that have to be like mathematically perfect. If you're doing anything for whatever reason, you're doing anything which is all about engineering, or things need to fit together perfectly, there's actually like reason to have things be absolutely perfect, then you'd obviously need that to be maintained. You need to work to those scales. You'd need that minute millimeter, centimeter, meter kind of changes. For us, the only reason that's really important is because all our walls and floors and anything that fits together and needs to look like it's one solid mass, they need to be built to certain scales. They need to be built to certain measurements and be perfectly aligned to each other, or are able to perfectly align to each other, which means they need to be the same height, or divisions of, like half a division, quarter of a division, a third of a division, that kind of thing. So if you're doing walls, for instance, you could do a wall which is X amount of units wide, and then you do a half wall, which is basically half of that unit, and then a quarter wall, which is quarter of that unit. Or maybe you can do a third wall, so you get your wall unit, you get your wall X amount of units, and you break it up into thirds. For everything else, so for things like this, my phone, this is a thing that in a game is going to get brought out and put in front of the character. Maybe it's something that is just in the environment, filling up the space. It's like a little scatter prop. Yes, you can get the measurements of this off the internet and you can build to that measurement, but they don't need to align and snap together, because these are free floating in the environment. It's this kind of stuff. It's the walls, it's the windows, it's the doors, where this is most important. So, again, I forget if I've already gone over this in the previous part of the video, but this grid here, which I realise it's purple before, now it's grey. That's because I did something. You'll find out in a second. This grid is, you've got to think about this as 4 separate grid, or 4 individual quadrants. The whole grid is obviously a grid, but this darker line, or this line in the middle, darker line, what? This line in the middle is breaking the grid up into those positive, negatives we talked about at the beginning. So this grid is, we need to think about this as really 12 units, because this is 12 units by 12 units, which is where the squared comes from. Again, I can't remember if I've done this already. Squared means basically a number by a number. So this is 12 by 12. This is 12 squared. If it was 12 by 12 by 12, that'd be 12 cubed, because you're cubing 3. Anyway. Again, this is the kind of stuff that you'll get used to using. It's just good to kind of think in the keep in the old brain. So let's actually change this to be useful for us, because that's one thing I did go over. I was just checking the video to see if I'd actually gone over this already. So why is this so important as well is this grid is a 24 by 24 centimeter grid. Each one of these quadrants is 12, means that all 4 make up 24 by 24. And if we actually look at that in the real world, I've got a tape measure here, That's 24 centimeters. Tiny. 24 centimeters. So if we're building something in here and we're building like an ogre, which is maybe 20 meters tall, massive, great hulking thing with an arm span of whatever, if we're building the arm span to go from this side here to this side here, that's going to be that wide. Which means when we take it into the engine, it's not going to be the right size. We've got to start scaling up, and we can't be doing that. So we've got to change the grid to be easier to work with, better to work with, more of a visual idea about what's going on. Like we can see the grid size in a better way. Anyway, so I'm going to make the grid bigger, easier to work with, more information, because this we're going to be working out here quite a lot, and this is quite annoying to work with because it's really small, and we will be working with the grid a lot. So what I'm going to do is change the size of the grid. So how do I do that? It's really easy. I come up to any of the viewports, I come up to this little row of icons at the top, and I just right click on the grid icon, which is this little grid icon right there, and I grid options. There we go. And these are the settings. So before we look at the numbers, I just want to draw your attention down to color, and mine was purple before because this first slider, if you slide it along, you get a load of different colors. I've set that to that magenta color. I quite like that. Boom. And then you can set the other colors to be different colors if you want to. A good one to look at is going to be the second one down, grids and lines, and I'll show you why in a second. So back up to the numbers. Length and width, it's 12. That's why it's really important for us to understand that this is what we're talking about. So this 12 relates to the size of this. If I set this to 24, the grid gets twice as big. So now it's 48 by 48, but each one of these is now 12 by 12. So I like working big. If I'm doing environment stuff, I like working to essentially 2 meters. A 2 meter, one of these quadrants is 2 meters, so the whole thing would be 4 by 4. So I'm going to set my units to 200. Boom. So now my grid, my whole grid, is 4 meters by 4 meters, but one of these little quadrants here is 2 meters. Now, grid lines every 5 units, that's really useful because I can then go to grid lines and numbers and change that color to something else. Change it to blue, for instance. Click that. Then you see that we get these blue, and that what's happening here is every 5 units on the grid, it's giving us a blue line. So now we can see, okay, that's every 5 centimeters, it's giving us a grid line. So if I set that to 10, every 10. So I can set that to 100. So I see the breakdown of 2 meters and then 1 meter. So this little area here is a 1 meter. Very useful. But what you might have seen then is when I've changed these, the actual units inside there still maintain 5. It doesn't keep the same size of the original unit there. So this is now a centimeter. If I change that to 100, it means now that this is 20 centimeters. So we should have, if I do my maths right, 5, that, boom. So 5, 10, 15, 20. 5, 10, 15, 20. So that is every 20 centimeters. Now, we don't need to worry about this too much. This is only an issue when we need to do sections of walls or environment pieces which need to be really, really precise. But generally we won't be needing to do that because a lot of the basic walls and floors and stuff are going to be big and flat and not very, they're going to be like 2 meters or 1 meter wide, something like that. They're not going to be 1.256 meters because that's you would never work like that. So I'm happy with keeping it like this. It means also that it's still easier to see. So all I have to think about now, this is 4 meters. The whole grid, 4 meters. Each one of these quadrants, 2 meters. Each one of these little quadrants have now appeared, 1 meter. Which means on the inside, every one of these is 20 centimeters. And if I set that to 4 units, so subdivision is 4, that means that each one of these little squares is 25 centimeters, which might be all right actually, because that means that we're going half by half by half. So full grid 4 meters. Half of the grid 2 meters. Half of that 1 meter. Half of that half a meter. So just to show you the settings, what I've got: length and width 200 units. Every grid line is every 100 units, and within each one of those grid lines is 4 subdivisions, which means 2 meters, 1 meter, and each one of these will be 25 centimeters. Easy. But again, like I said at the beginning, some of this might be a lot of like, whoa, that's a lot of information to take in, and it might be like really confusing, like, whoa, that's a lot of it. Why are we doing this? Why are we taking so much time? As we work on, this will all become very, very clear. So, I'm going to also bring in a little friend. Now, he's already in the scene. If you've looked in the outline here, you might already see him. But I've got Manny the Mannequin. Now, this is something that I'm going to have available on the VLE for a downloadable thing that we can download and use, and we will be using this. This geezer is pretty much 6 foot tall, and we're going to use him inside Unreal and inside Maya to basically scale everything up, make sure everything's the right size. Yes, we're going to be getting actual dimensions for stuff, as much stuff as we can anyway. Some stuff we might not be able to get. We might have to eyeball it or use our best judgment, but some stuff we're going to be able to get actual dimensions for. So this guy is just basically saying, if we're making a door frame, does that feel like a 6 foot guy is, you know, proportionate to it? If we're making tables and chairs, desks, whatever, is that proportionate to him? So that's Manny. So I brought him in there, and he just hangs out in my outliner. And what I'm going to do is, first a little bit of intermediate modeling, is I'm going to set this guy up into what we call a layer. And it's not like how Photoshop layers work. Just think about it as a visibility layer, a channel, let's call it. Very, very simple. All I'm going to do is grab Manny. I'm going to come over to my over on my right hand side here. I've got my channel box that's docked here. So if that's not open, if you've got somewhere else open or whatever, just come find channel box right here on the right. Click it. And if you don't see channel box there, just make sure your workspace is set to general. So I've got the channel box here, and then down here where it says display and layers, I'm going to come to layers. Add create layer from selected. So make sure I've got Manny selected. Boom. And then we get this. This little layer appears. And what this is basically a visibility layer. There are more reasons why I might use these later on, but for now, all we're going to do is use this to, if we want to see Manny, we can press V. If we don't want to see Manny, we can turn off V. So basically we can turn him on and off. And that's it. That's all we're going to do for now. So what we're going to do now is jump into Unreal and reacquaint ourselves with Unreal, but do a bit of a setup with Unreal, like do a little bit of initial getting in there ready for bringing stuff into Unreal. So now we're in Unreal. I'm going to launch, I've downloaded the latest version of Unreal, and this is the one I'm going to work on. And when we're working, remember, we need to make sure that we're always working at home or in the uni, pardon me, on the same version. So 5.5.1, going to launch. Now there's not going to be any like grid setup or anything like that we need to do in Unreal, because that's not how it works. What we're going to do is basically start to make our template that we're going to work in. So when I did that basic Unreal, I did use a blank one, just because that was a good way of showing you how stuff worked. But what I'm going to do is going to use the first person one on this one. I'm going to use the first person template, again, desktop, tag desktop. I'm not going to have any starter content. Yeah, I'm not going to have any starter content. I'm going to, target platform, desktop, maximum quality. My project's going to my desktop there. I'm going to name my project something, so I'm going to call it Intro to 3D Scene. Then create that. Let it do its thing. Again, my little banner is on my other monitor, but eventually Unreal will open up in here. And it does take a bit of time. I don't know if that's coming through in the capture. My camera kind of skipping. It's just because it's loading on my stuff. The first time you open any of these things, it always has to compile stuff. Did I actually take... I might have not unticked the starter content then. But I'll pause the video and come back when it comes back. And we're back. So, this is what happens when you open up the any kind of template. You compile the scene for stuff. You opens up and you get this. You get a template. It's different for the different kind of templates. So third person, point and click, racing. The first person template is a first person template. So if I click play at the top here, now I get a little playthrough here. And there's things already set up inside this template that are going to be useful for these kind of games. There's a little bit of physics involved, so I can push some of these blocks around. There's obviously jump controls. We can't see our feet, but you can kind of see a hand appearing into the screen every now and then. We've got jump, navigation. It's a first-person game. Plus, we've also got a pick up. We can do pick up, and then we can fire balls around, which is all nice and good. Now, we're not going to use most of that, but we want to have the ability to move around the scene like a first person, because that's going to be useful for us to play test, or not to play test, but to make sure that our environment is looking okay. So, what we're going to do is new level. We're going to go to basic, like that. That gives us a bit of a floor to work with. I don't know why I just jumped to a different scale then, but okay. Gives us a floor to work with. Gives us some basic lights, and we can start building our scene inside here. Now, in our outliner, we've got a few things. We've obviously got the lighting, which is nicely contained inside its folder, like we looked at in the basics of Unreal. We've got a little folder that contains all our lighting. We've got a floor, and then we've got our player start. Now, just as a game design, game level thing to understand, and it's all going to be useful for us to understand this, the player start is something that we put into the level so that when we press start, it's where we start off. Now, you'll see stuff kind of appear on the left-hand side there, all in yellow. Those are things that happen when you play the game. When you start the game, these things are kind of like run. But when you come out of it, they disappear. So don't worry about any of that. So the player start is something which we can move around the scene as well. So if I move this over to here, that means that we're going to start over in the corner. So when it comes to navigating around our scene, make sure it looks okay. We don't always have to start off in the same place. We can move it around the scene to help us. So there you go. So that's the scene. Already set up. Nice and good. So what's happening inside our lighting here? A few things I want to go over. Basics is directional light. This directional light, once again, is just a really, really basic light. So I bring a object into the scene. Scale it up. So this directional light is literally just a directional light. I can rotate around and it changes the direction. It's okay. Exponential fog is something that is it doesn't affect the lighting whatsoever. It's more like, you see how it gives us this fog in the background, this distance. If that wasn't in there, we'd get this black. I don't know why it's all like really choppy around the bottom as well. Oh, that's probably the clouds. It gives us this fog in the bottom here. Light atmosphere is basically the sky. A skylight is a way to improve our lighting a little bit. What it does is it kind of simulates atmospheric conditions for when when light comes in from the sun, it passes through our atmosphere, and then depending where you are in the world, you have these different kind of atmospheric distortions. Basically, it helps our lighting. Is the easiest one. It helps our lighting. SM Sky Sphere is basically a sky ball. We can't see it. And the volumetric clouds are these. So we've got clouds we can bring in. Are all these you can bring in from coming into the quick access menu and literally typing in what you want here. So whenever I set up a scene to do these internals or external lighting, I always bring in these as kind of like my initial debugging things. I might change the lighting later on, but just as I'm bringing stuff into the scene, I'm always bringing in a directional light, an exponential height fog, a sky atmosphere. So lights, directional light, exponential height fog. So I can exponential height fog. So I'm literally typed in at the very top in the search bar XEX for exponential. And exponential height fog. Sky atmosphere, so when I type in Sky. Atmosphere. Skylight. SM Sky Sphere. SM. That's in there. Like, where is it? SM Sky Sphere. Where is it? Oh, okay, never mind. Just a ball. I guess it's not too important for us in this anyway. And then volumetric cloud again. This will be inside here. Volumetric cloud. Volumetric cloud. But if you set up with a template like this, you're generally going to get these brought in with it anyway, which is all fine. Now, if I just move my head to the side a quick sec, you're going to see in our content browser here, we have some stuff. We have folders already in here. So we have level prototyping. We have materials. Some of these are going to be useful for us. We have textures. We have meshes. These are very, very, very basic grey boxing elements that we're not actually going to be using. We're not going to get rid of them, but we're not going to use them. First person arms. This is all stuff that we need to... the reason we're not getting rid of them is because a lot of this stuff is tied into the programming or the blueprinting in the background. And if we start deleting stuff willy-nilly, it starts to kind of break our template a little bit. So we're just going to leave them where they are and just ignore these folders. Because I've not got that weapon in the scene to pick up. So when I play the game, I've not actually got a weapon in my hand. And that's something I don't want to have. I don't want to have anything in the hand. All we're using this for is just to move around and navigate around the scene. Cool. So that's Unreal ready to go. And I'm just going to do a file, save current level. And I'm going to name my level, I'm going to call it debug. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a level which is set up just to bring my individual assets in and basically make sure that everything's okay. And then I'm going to have another level where I'm actually going to be building my level from. Now again, we kind of went over this in the intro to Unreal video, but the great thing about Unreal is just because I'm doing something inside this debug level doesn't mean it's not going to affect anything in the other levels. Because all I'm going to do inside here is bring in lights, bring in geometry, all that kind of stuff. If I want to change materials, if I want to change geometries, it's all going to be done through like the content browser and going into, so if I go into low prototype materials, like it's all going to be done in these kind of windows. And this is perpetual over the entire scene. So if I start messing with something inside here, all the materials which is carrying this m_solid is going to get affected. And when we start doing this stuff more and more, you're really going to see the power of Unreal and how awesome this is. Cool. So let's actually go and actually make some stuff. So we jump back into Maya. Boom, like that. And I'm going to start setting up some flooring. And I'm going to set up some bits of flooring first. I'm going to set up very, very basic flooring. And then I'm going to set up very, very basic walls. And then from them walls, create very, very basic windows and doors. And talk about some of the things that we're going to need to know about. Now again, this is all very much environment modeling. Environment modeling, sorry, my voice kind of clipped a little bit then. It's all environment modeling, but this isn't an environment modeling course. When you do environment modeling next year, you can use this to make your stuff even better. We're still keeping things very basic. So let's learn how to actually make stuff in a very basic way inside Maya and control stuff inside Maya. So what I'm going to do is make flooring. Now flooring, we're just going to think about this as just flat planes of geometry, no thickness to it. We can add thickness later on if we want to, but for now, flat planes. So I'm going to come up here to my poly modeling shelf, and I'm going to grab my plane. And remember, if you don't have in Create polygon primitives, if you do not have this interactive creation turned on, what's going to happen is you're going to get a plane made in the middle of the world. So you see, it has actually been made, but it's so small because it's literally a centimeter. You can have this being made, and it's got subdivisions on it. It's got 10 subdivisions by 10 subdivisions. I hate that. I just want a single plane. I want to keep it easy and simple. So what I'm going to do is make sure I've got interactive creation turned on. I'm going to click a plane, which is this one, the fifth one along. Hold shift, and I'm going to click and drag out in the middle of the scene like this. click and drag out in the middle of the scene like this. Why isn't it? Hello? There we go. Don't know what's happening there. And I don't really care about how big this is, because I'm going to change the size of this in a minute. So I'm just going to click and drag out a plane. This is my basic flooring. Okay, so let's actually get this to the size that we actually want it. So in my on my control box, channel box on the right hand side here, I've got my inputs, and if this isn't exposed, just click where it says polyplane 1. And you'll get this, and these are all the initial settings for this piece of geometry. And the only thing I'm going to change in here is where it says width and height. I'm going to change these to 200, because we were talking about at the beginning, this is a 4 meter square, yes, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to build in 2 meter blocks of flooring. If for whatever reason I need to have a 4 meter square, it's really easy. But I'm going to build a 4 meter by 4 meter, a 2 meter by 2 meter piece of flooring at first. And what's 2 meters? Well, it's 200 units. So width 200, height 200. Boom, and then we've got a piece of flooring. So this now is ready to be. But it's perfect. It's nothing needs changing. The great thing about working with these really basic bits of geometry is either the UVs are completely set up for you, because this is a square, and I'll explain UVs in a second. The UVs are already set up because this is a perfect square, and UVs are in a square format, or the UVs aren't too far away from being perfect anyway. So, what are UVs, just quickly? So, we can check our UVs by going to UV editing, and then clicking on this far right panel here, this one with this little checkerboard on it, and it's going to open up this window. So what are UVs? UVs are the skin of a mesh. It's the faces. The confusing thing about UVs is that when we talk about it as a thing, not necessarily related directly to 3D, UVs is this thing. We're talking about something in a 3D environment, in a 2D environment. These aren't 3D. They're a flat image. But they do wrap around, they do relate to a 3D object. So when we come up to more complex UVing, and UVing is not really complex anyway, it gets a little bit getting used to. There is a slight learning curve to it, as with everything. When we get up to more kind of complex UVing, it will become more apparent why it's important to have our UVs very nice and neat. But as a basic kind of setup like this, we're using a square piece of geometry. UV layouts are a square format. So if my flooring is perfectly square, it means my UVs are going to be perfectly square. It means that I don't actually have to do anything to my UVs at all. So, cool. Now the complex thing about this, and the thing that I really want to drill in, is the 3D positioning of stuff, and the positioning of the manipulator, or this guy in the middle. So, a lot of the time, if I was just to build something like over here, and I'm modeling, and then my pivot point or my manipulator is over here. So that's common when people tend to grab stuff in face. So look where my manipulator is. So I'm in object mode. My manipulator is right here. So I'm not moving the object here, but I'm moving the faces. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. So I'm going to grab everything by faces, and I'm going to move it. When I go back to object mode, the pivot point is still in the original area, because I'm not technically moving the object. I'm moving a face. It just happens to be the entire face is the object. A little bit confusing. You'll get it. At first it's going to be a bit confusing. You'll get it. So what I want to do is make sure that this piece of geometry is set up in a perfect position for us to bring it into the game engine and make it like a Lego piece, so everything snaps together. And how I do that is by, if I press W for my movement tool, moving this manipulator to a better position. In the middle of an object like this, it's a bit hard to get everything really nice and clipped together, because they might be offset slightly, because everything is basically using the middle to align to. That's a really bad position to align to. But if we align to one of the corners, it means that we can snap to the corner of something very easily. You would have seen that in that basic to Unreal video. And this is where a new hotkey comes in. So I'm going to just do this off the other monitor. Boom. So our new hotkey So if you hold D, you'll see that the inside becomes like a little circle. Now what's happening is that's allowing me to detach my manipulator away from my geometry. Those of you who've done Maya already or done Blender might be familiar with something like this. But what I'm doing here is I'm basically moving my manipulator. If I don't have D held down and I move it, I'm moving the geometry. So D detaches the manipulator. And then if I, at the same time, hold V, now V for vertex, V snaps to vertexes. So V for vertex snaps to vertexes. So if I do a little duplicate underneath there, so if there's no other vertexes in the scene, this isn't going to work. But if there's another object in the scene, this is going to work. So V for vertex, you'll see that the square in the middle turns into a circle, means we're in magnet mode essentially. And up at the top there, if I keep pressing V, you'll see right around here that little magnet is highlights when I have V held down, and the little dot is representative of a vertex. So if I hold V and drag from the middle, you'll see it jumps and snaps, and where it'll snap to the closest vertex to my mouse. So if we think logically, if we're detaching the manipulator and then holding V for vertex, it means that the manipulator is going to snap to the nearest vertex, like that. So that snap manipulator to vertex. So make sure, this is why the notes are important, make sure you write it down. Cool. Now we're going to use another snapping function here, and again you can use this if you hold D with it as well, but this time we're not going to hold D, we're just going to hold X. And now you see if I keep tapping X, you'll see up here again another magnet is flashing. This time we've got a little grid at the bottom of the magnet. I'm going to hazard a guess you understand what that means. It's going to snap to grid. So if I hold X, again the inside turns to a circle, which means it's looking for something to snap to. And if I hold X, it snaps to grid, so I can snap this to all the grid points. So I'm going to snap this to the middle of the world, like that. So now this is going to be a perfectly 200 by 200 centimeter unit, or a 2 meter by 2 meter piece of flooring. The manipulator, the pivot point, is going to be at the bottom left. And this is important because I'll kind of display it inside here. Inside the engine, when we bring in and when we duplicate new assets, what we're going to be able to do is basically snap the corners to each other and build flooring really quickly. And there's not going to be any gaps in between the flooring. You know, in some games where you see like a little bit of a gap in between the flooring, whatever, that means that those two vertexes have not been placed together. And if we set that up inside here, this position translates over to Unreal, which is awesome. Now, we've made our first bit of flooring. Awesome. Oh, I'll put that note up for snap to grid as well. There you go. So, X equals snap to grid. There you go. Grid. That's simple. So we've got our first piece of flooring. This is the first thing we can actually bring into a game engine, which is great because that's what we're going to do in a second. We're going to export this as an FBX. We're going to import it into the game engine. But before we do that, we also just want to make sure that we're sticking with good naming conventions. We're going to name stuff correctly inside of Unreal, and we're also going to name stuff correctly inside of Maya. It's very important that we do naming conventions. Once again, remember, there's not a lot of rules inside 3D, but they're all important. There are tons of rules, millions of rules inside 2D, but they're all very malleable. There you go. So, what are the naming conventions? Right, so because we're taking this into Unreal, and because this is We're going to have a lot of different types of geometry to play with later on. We've got to make sure that we're knowing what we're looking at, or we're knowing what we're searching for. And one of the first things we need to do is the prefix of something. And we're going to put a letter or two letters before something, so that in the game engine we can tell what it is. So for instance, a material, when we make materials inside the game engine, inside Unreal, we're going to prefix it with M underscore whatever. M means material. If we're doing anything to do with blueprinting, we're going to do BP underscore whatever it is. We're not actually going to do any blueprinting, but that's that's what you would do. For this is what we'd call a static mesh. It's something that won't move in the scene. So this would be SM underscore whatever. So inside here, I'm going to start naming stuff. So in my outliner, I'm going to double click to get to name my object, and capital letters SM underscore floor underscore full, or floor full if you want to, just floor full. There you go, SM underscore floor full, not fucked full, floor full. There you go, floor full. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 other bits of flooring. I'm going to make a vertical half, a horizontal half, and a quarter flooring. Now that's going to be using some new tools. All this is new tools, but this is going to be part of our big 5. We've made a piece of geometry at the minute, which is cool. That's the most important thing. We need something in the scene to model, so we know how to make geometry. And I really want people just to play and make geometry, have a play with the settings. Now what we're going to do is start affecting our models. And there are basically 5 tools that do this. Yes, there are loads of different other complex tools that when you get used to Maya you can use. But really, it all comes down to extrusion, which is basically producing more geometry out of another. Separation, separating bits of geometry from each other. Beveling, which is taking an edge and splitting it into 2. We're going to look at that a lot. Connecting, dividing, splitting, all basically the same thing. It comes under connecting this, but it's basically we're adding new edges to stuff. And bridging, which is between 2 planes. We're basically creating a new face. First, what we're going to do now is we're just going to make a new edge in this, but we're not going to do it on this. We're going to duplicate. So I'm going to Control D. And you now see here with Control D. So Control D is duplicate. So remember, write that down. Control D, duplicate. I've duplicated a new floor. This, it says SM floor full 1 because there's more than 1 in it. So I'm going to call this SM floor vert half. This is going to be my vertical half. And then what I'm going to do is come up here to, well, first of all, I'm going to change the different way we're selecting objects. Currently, we're selecting it in object mode. Basically, we're just clicking on an object and we're selecting it. What I want to do is add a new edge across the edges of something. I'm adding a new edge, which means I need to select in edge mode. If you say this stuff out loud, or if you really think about what you're saying, you're often telling yourself what to do. So I'm adding a new edge. The keyword being edge in that. So I need to select in edge mode. So if I hold right click, I go to edge. You see it turns blue. That's because we're in edge mode. And if I hover over the edges, you're going to see that it turns red. That red basically indicates, do you want to select that component? Now I'm adding a vertical one in here. So I'm going to click that top edge. It turns orange. I'm going to hold shift and click the bottom edge. There you go. So now I've got both those edges selected. I'm going to split across that edge. I'm basically going to put a cut in the middle of this. And all I'm going to do is go to Mesh Tools, Connect. There we go. And it looks blue, but really the line is green. You got a green line that appears. This is a preview. It's telling us the edge is going to be here when you're okay with it. Now if I hold the middle mouse button and drag left and right, I can decrease and increase the amount of edges. So that's holding the middle mouse, dragging left and right. Really, I just want 1. So I'm going to set that to 1. I'm just going to hit either W or Enter. It just basically confirms. And then we've got a new edge in the middle. Now I want to point something out as well that I love about this. I'm not dragging this edge to the middle. I'm adding a new edge in the middle, which means in my UVs, I've got a new edge in my UVs. If I was just to grab, so I'll do it on the other piece of geometry. So if I was just to grab this edge and move it in, so I've got my UV up here. If I move this in, you see how it's not actually changing the shape of my UV? That would make our texture start to squash, which is not a good thing. So with this, it's by adding something, and it's added the point, the edge in the UV. And what I'm going to do is now go to face mode, because I'm going to delete a face. Face mode, there you go. I'm going to delete a face. So I'm again holding right click. I need to get rid of a face. Face being the important word. Face. And then I'm going to delete that right hand side face there. And you'll see that it actually gets rid of the UV in it gets rid of the UV here. Awesome. I don't have to do any UV in. It's amazing. I will be doing a whole video on UVs anyway, so again, don't worry about it. So that's my floor vertical half. Now what I'm going to do is just start to move this down for the time being, because I'm just moving out of the way when I'm done with it. I'm going to put these all back into the right position in a sec. So I've moved it down there, just out of the way. I'm going to go back to my main floor again. Again, Control D, sorry, to duplicate. Control duplicate. This new floor fold that come up, I'm going to call this floor hos half. So floor hos half. This is now my horizontal halfway. And why am I doing this and this rather than just making that and rotating it? It's because this UV is now going vertical. Now if you think of like wallpaper, wallpaper has a direction to it. If it's got a patterned wallpaper, it has a direction to it. But if I was to bring something that needs to be horizontal, I need to start messing with stuff. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making a version which has a horizontal version of the UV. But I do the exact same thing. So I need to cut across that edge. So I go to edge mode, holding down right click, go to edge mode, select the right hand side, select the left hand side. So I've got both these selected. We're always cutting across. If I want to cut across horizontally, I need to select the verticals. If I want to cut across vertically, I need to select the horizontals. So with those two selected, edit, mesh tools, connect, boom, added it in. W to confirm. I need to delete that top face, so I'm going to go to rolled right click, go to face, delete that face. Once again, we've got a new piece of geometry, the UVs are perfect, we're all good. And the last one is that quarter version, basically a half the size of this. Now again, I could just half this size, but my UVs wouldn't be right. Because this is like, I actually want this to be half size for reasons. So what I'm going to do now is, again, go to edit mode. Sorry, duplicate. Oop, duplicate, there you go. And this would be floor quarter. Floor quarter. Hold right click, go to edge. So I'm going to cut across the edge. I'm going to cut in one direction first. So boom, add that in. It doesn't matter if you do vertical or horizontal. And then I'm going to cut across horizontally. And then delete the face that I don't want. Boom, boom, boom. And now with that, I now have a quarter. Now why have I cut them in the way I have? I've made sure that the geometry that's left behind is connected to where this pivot point is. What I don't want to have is like cutting this, doing, getting this in place like this, but then deleting this face on the left, because then my pivot point is like not connected to my geometry. It's hard to place stuff then. So that's our floor, the basic flooring. We're going to make more flooring, but this is basic flooring set up. So now what I can do is hold X and just make sure everything is snapped to the grid. I'm just going to move it up so it's all snapped to the same place. Tick it. And then I'm just going to select everything, drag a marquee box over everything. And I'm just going to make sure that all my data and all my transforms and scales are all basically default. So first of all, poly modeling shelf, make sure we're there. First of all, I'm going to delete history. That's the middle blue button here. Delete history. That's going to get rid of any of that information. And then I'm going to freeze transformation. And what freeze transformation will do is take the position of everything here and make it default. So where he's got the little snowflake with 0, 0, 0. So watch these numbers. They're all 0. So now every one of our objects is now nice. Now what I'm going to do is actually export these into a folder. I've pre-set up a folder on my desktop to export these. But first of all, I'm going to save. And one thing I haven't gone over, which I would have gone over in another video, is project windows, project folders inside Maya. Other programs don't do this, and I think people like that other programs don't do that because it's not as clean, it's not as messy, I guess. What we need to do inside Maya is make a project window. And the reason we need to do this is because all the information, all the textures or anything like that is all contained within one folder. It's all kept together. If you do not do this and you end up moving things around different folders, you're going to lose connection to stuff. So if you're doing a lot of testing of materials, you're doing a lot of UVing and stuff, and you need these materials connected to it, if you start moving the materials into a material folder and then the object into an object folder, you're going to lose the connection. So when you open up Maya again, all your textures have disappeared. It's better for, like, one, just being clean and cleanly and organized, but two, when you're debugging, when you're doing longer projects, the last thing you want to do is spend the first half an hour of a project reassigning materials. It's a pain. So first of all, we should have really done this at the beginning of this, and I would have done this in a previous video anyway. But first of all, what we want to do is File, Project Window, Set Project. Again, terminology it needs changing. Set Project will redirect to a pre-existing project. Project Window creates a new project. So in here, current project, I'm going to click New. I'm going to name this Intro to 3D Scene. With all my terrible typing. There we go. Scene. And I'm going to put it my location. Really, really watch out for this. People often say, "Oh, it's my project's disappeared. Maya's terrible. It's corrupted it." No, it's not. It's just because people aren't looking at this. 100% of the time, this has happened. It puts it in a really horrible folder in this project thing. Put it onto the desktop. So I'm going to click this little folder, desktop. I'm going to just select the desktop. Boom, it's going to be there. Do not, and I'll always go on about this, do not save and work off a hard drive. Do not do that. Do not save and work off the OneDrive using the browser extension. Do not do that. Save to the desktop. And then when you're done with it, move it to your hard drive and move it to your OneDrive. I'm going to really drill that into people. Okay. So all I've done there is just saved, create a folder, create a project, and then I'm going to go to File, Save As, Save Scene As, and now it's sending it to the desktop, to Intro to 3D Scene, and then the Scenes folder. That's fine. That's where I want to put this. Scenes folder. I'm just going to save, I don't know, save one. Okay. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I'm keeping everything in the right position. Once I've got stuff that I actually want to send into the game engine, I'm going to send this stuff into a separate folder. Because I don't want to clutter my stuff, because we're going to be making a lot of different things. And if my scenes folder is just full of stuff, it's going to be hard to navigate. So what I'm going to do is export these into a folder I've set up. So, File, Export Selection. So I'm just doing one at a time. Export Selection. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to find Intro to 3D Scene. Oh, I should have actually named the other one. So Intro to 3D Scene. Oh no, I've called it 3D Assets. I think I'm thinking ahead. I called it 3D Assets. And I've set 3 folders up. One called Debug. That's just where I put Manny the mannequin. Environment Geo. That's my walls and floors and stuff. So I'm going to go into Environment Geo. I'm going to name this, again, SM_floor full. And export. That's exported. I select my floor vert hall. So in fact what I can do is copy that name. Do the same thing. I'm going to export this. Export it as SM floor vert hall, vert half. grab my other name, file, section, boop, boop. I have my last one, file, boop, boop. So I'm literally just I'm double clicking on the name inside the outliner, Control C, then Control V inside here, export, and make sure it's an FBX. So we want to make sure that we're exporting as an FBX. There we go. So now we've got some stuff, which is awesome. So what I'm going to do is then jump into Unreal. I'm going to come to Content here. I'm going to set up a new folder inside here. So right click, New Folder. There we go. Right click, New Folder. I'm going to call this Geo for geometry. And then I'm going to go into this folder and make another folder called Environment. So all my environment stuff is going to be inside here. So I'm going to double click inside here. And all I'm going to do is find that folder. So find that folder I exported to. I've got my four FBXs there. I'm just going to click and drag them in. Like this. So I'm clicking and dragging them in. And then it's going to ask me a few things. So we're importing content. Do I need to change anything here? So materials, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off, sorry, I'm leaning off camera there. I'm going to turn off where it says import materials. So when everything comes in, you'll get something like this. It might be a bit thinner. It might be like this, something. I don't know. Where it says materials up here, I'm just going to click that. I'm going to untick import materials because I want to make my own materials. I don't want materials to come in with it. In general, this is all good. Static mesh, all good. So I'm going to import. Boop, 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 boop. There you go. And now we see we've got SM floor full, SM, we've got all these things. We click in, and that's our flooring. Now why it's really important to me as well to make sure that we're not just scaling stuff up, but we're cutting stuff, or we're making sure if we are scaling, we're scaling to proper sizes and then changing our UVs, stuff we're going to get used to doing, is that it's all about how the UVs are being read. So you see how this is 5 of these little squares along? Well, our full version is 10 because obviously the UVs are different sizes as we looked at. Our scale's good. And then what I can do, just to kind of test this stuff out, move that out of the way for now, is I can start dragging this stuff in. I can drag it in, set it to the world 0. So where does it start in the world? There it is. SM floor full. Press F to focus in. So that's our flooring right there. In fact, I can probably just hide this flooring for now. So that's boom. And then I can bring in my half floor. Again, set that to world 0. There you go. So you see my units are set snapping to 10 units. So every 10 centimeters it's snapping. That's good. I can't see any seams. There's nothing really. Oh, slow my camera down a bit. There you go. So it's snapping to the seams. There's nothing bad about that. I get my floor vertical half. Again, I'll just set that to that. Drag it over. That's all good. And then I get my floor quarter. Drag that in. Set it to world 0. And then drag that up there. Cool. So, what looks to be one big solid shape is actually 4 shapes. Now, that's good because I can't actually see separations in the... I can't actually see separations. I can't see little blue lines. What I'm looking for is if anything like that happens. If something like that happens, it means that I've either got my pivot point in the wrong position or I've not got my snap turned on or something like that. So I'm basically looking for this, which is good. Now while we're here and we're starting to deal with these different materials or different objects, I'm going to make corresponding materials as well. So I'm going to come up to content again and I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it materials. And I'm keeping these capitalized so I know that the ones that I've made. So into materials. Again, I'm going to go make a new folder, call this environment. So then when I'm bringing other stuff in there, prop stuff, I can just separate stuff off. So right in here, I'm going to right click, I'm going to make a new material. Like this. And this I'm going to call, so M for material underscore floor full. I'm going to make another one, M underscore floor vert half. M underscore floor hors half. Material M underscore floor quarter. There you go. Nice. So I'm setting up materials. And all I'm going to do at first is just put basic colors on them so I know what is what. And it also starts me to think about, instead of just clicking and dragging stuff from here into the scene, I'm going to assign these materials in a different way. So that it, oops, it is. So I'll grab all this, and I'm actually just going to do, I'm just going to make a bit of a mess at first. I'm just going to drag a few things off, drag. And I'll show you why this is so important. Again, I have shown you this in a previous video, but I really want to kind of drill it in. Okay, so I've got stuff going on. So what I'm going to do now is go into floor full, just double click it, open up the material. Remember that this is the actual material here. Now, awesomely, in the new versions, instead of having to make that constant every time, you can still do that if you want to, but the basic parameters here, if you're just using like a basic parameter, a one node parameter that's between 0 and 1, you can literally just input these right here. So if I wanted no metallic on this, I'd say 0. If I wanted half the roughness on this, I'd have 0.5. I can still right click, start typing constant, get a constant, and then use this. I can still do this. I can still exactly do this. It's just the new version has these for you, and it even has like a little color parameter for you as well. But I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. Again, I'm not using the shortcuts to learn. So I want a constant 3 vector. That's basically a color node to go into here. So I'm going to right click, constant 3 vector color, drag the white pin into the color, and then just choose a color. I'm realizing I'm hanging over the edge here with this. So I'm choosing a color. I'm going to call this like this kind of red. Boom. Awesome. Now I want no metallic, so I'm not going to plug anything into this, but I want a bit more roughness than half. So I'm going to right click again, start typing in constant, because I just want to have something which is a 0 to 1. So that's what a constant is. Drag that into roughness, and then inside this constant here, I'm just going to type in 0.75. 0.75. There you go. So it's a bit rougher. I don't want shiny floors yet. Cool. And I'm going to save that. And I'm basically going to do the exact same thing for the other materials, just with different colors, but the same roughness parameter. So I go to this one, come in, constant 3 vector, plug it in, get my color, make this a kind of a greeny color, get my value, put it inside here, roughness. This is, now I will always, whenever you're learning stuff, I will always recommend just going the long way about stuff, because it ingrains procedures into your head. You know, you don't just do things once and then you're all good. You know, you got to do stuff over and over again. It teaches you to learn where things are. Last one. And these colours don't mean anything as well. These are just random colours. Oops. Plug in. There we go. Now, what I'm not going to do, like I said, is just click and drag these in. Because if I click and drag that onto that material, you see it's applied to that material, but it's not applied to any of the other full floor materials. Or full floor objects. So what I'm going to do is go to my geometry, to my environments. I'm going to open up my floor full. And then inside here, I've got my little material tab on the right hand side. I'm going to click on this little drop down here to the side. I'm going to start typing in m_floor, and then I want to get floor full. So I'm finding the stuff I want to use. I'm just going to make my face a bit smaller for now. There you go. So I'm finding the materials I want to use literally by typing it in. So it's a material_floor, okay, and then it's a pink one. Boom. Right. So I'm gonna click save in a minute. Oh, it's already done it, hasn't it? Yes, it's already done it, because the new version does it automatically. So you can see there, all the versions, all the instances of a full floor, all have that material assigned to it straight away. It means I don't have to go through and drag the same material onto a million different things. So I can do that for all of them. So save that, close it, go to my other one. This is my floor horizontal half. So again, floor hors half. There we go. Floor quarter. And last one, vertical half. Awesome. So now all our floors are in the right position. Now this is not obviously going to be left like these colours forever. I'm pre-setting up these materials, so when I have actual materials, you know, when we've textured stuff, I can just come in and throw that material on. Or well, throw the stuff into these pre-set up materials, and then everything gets updated. It's wild. So now I'm just going to go through and delete all the things I don't want in the scene. Get rid of everything like that. There you go. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a thing that I like to do, is have a bit of a layout of all my assets. There you go. So a little display. There we go. Now what I can do as well is that's 2 meters. 1 meter by 2 meter, 1 meter, 2 meters by 1 meter. I can actually come in and see how that feels. So that is 2 meter bit of flooring. Does that look okay? Does that look right? Does that feel alright? You know? Do I feel like I need a 4 meter? You know, we could make a 4 meter big bit of flooring, especially if we're doing anything like mosaics or a very unique bit of tiling, we could do a 4 meter. But right now, that's them. Awesome. So now we're in. We've already got stuff into the game engine. We've already got some stuff modeled and textured, UV'd anyway. Now what we're going to do is do some walls. And we're going to use the same kind of parameter, the same kind of, you know, thinking, same judgment. So we'll go back into Maya. For now, I'm just going to move these down below the floor. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a new plane. And I'm going to start off by making a 2 meter by a 2 meter piece of wall in width. So 200 in the units here, as per usual, 200. Now my height, this is where I'm actually going to start using another control. I'm going to rotate this round. So I'm going to press E for my rotate. I'm going to start to rotate it, and you're going to see in your channel box here, one of those rotations start to update, and you can see there. So what is a right angle? It's 90 degrees. So I'm going to I'm just going to put 90 degrees in there. There we go. And now my height, well, this is where I can use Manny. So where's Manny? There's Manny. I'm going to bring this up. Obviously that's not quite right. That's too low. For if you're thinking of like a standard piece of walling in a room like this, that's too low. So I can, okay, what height? Maybe 300. What's 300 look like? Okay, that's very high. And that's another meter. So what about 250 meters? Sorry, 250 units, 250 centimeters. That feels a lot better. Now, what I do have to think about is the environment that I'm doing, and that's why, again, in the previous video, we've looked at, you know, looking at your reference, looking at your sizes, kind of like understanding sizes and dimensions, you know, observing things. Do I need to have a 2 meter by a 4 meter? Is it like a really long piece of wall that I'm doing? You know, do I need to have something like that? You know, that'd be good for like a really tall, grander hotel. But if I'm doing something like a motel, then maybe, you know, that's general room size. That feels a lot better. Something like that. You know, that feels like a motel ceiling. But I reckon I want to go grand. So I'm going to go 2 meters by 4 meters. Like that. So I'm kind of eyeballing a little bit. I'm not being super precious with. I'm not like trying to make sure that the geometry is absolutely perfect to the floor. I'm kind of eyeballing it a little bit just to get a good idea. And then I'm going to D and V as we did before. So D releases the manipulator, V snaps the vertex. I'm going to snap that to the bottom left of this piece of geometry. Same position as I would have with my flooring. And I'm going to hide Manny for now. And I'm going to X, snap to grid, to there. Awesome. So that's now a 2 meter by 4 meter piece of walling, which has some UVs. The UVs for these, I'm not particularly bothered about them being right just now, because this is what they look like at the minute. But we can very easily change that later on. But for now, like I said, I'm not really bothered. It's just really good for the flooring that that's happened. So this is my SM wall full. I'm going to do the same thing for this. I'm going to do a half wall. I'm going to do a... I think I'm just going to do a half wall for now. A lot of the time, if we have this stuff set up and we're building in the engine, we might think, oh, actually, you know what? I need a quarter wall, or I need a thirds wall. We can literally just come in, make one, take it into... It takes us 10 seconds. So I've got that. And, hey, you know what? Just I might as well speed up the process. Delete history, freeze transformation. Let's export this straight away. Now, obviously, because we're using naming conventions, everything's going to have an alphabetical kind of order. So SM, everything's going to be SM, obviously, underscore. We've had floors and we've had walls, so obviously they're going to keep with each other. You know, if I just put like SM underscore half, we're going to have a bunch of halves, so we don't know which one's which. But if I know it's SM underscore wall, all the walls are going to be together because it's all alphabetically categorized, and then I can choose if it's half. You know, it's all about making it easy for us. I'm going to duplicate this new one. I'm going to call half. I'm going to cut it in half. I do it the exact same way that I did it before. I'm cutting an edge. I'm putting an edge in something. So I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to select the top edge and the bottom edge. So holding shift to do the multi-select. Mesh tools, connect. I just want that one edge in there. Delete the one on the right because I want to have the piece of wall in the middle of the world, like that. We're all good. Just going to grab that name and then make sure that I export it. That's exported and ready to go. And I think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a thirds wall. A wall that is slightly thinner, but not a quarter, because maybe a quarter wall is going to be too thin. And, you know, I might never need this, but, you know, it's good to have it and not need it. So duplicate that wall. I'm going to call this third wall. That's got, no, write it out instead of using numbers. Wall third. Now this one, I am going to do the same thing. Top edge, bottom edge, mesh tools connect. This time I'm going to go one up, so I've got connected 2 segments, which makes this into thirds. And I'm going to delete the 2 right hand faces. So go to face mode, delete that one, and there we go. So I've got my thirds wall, delete history, freeze transformation. Oh, make sure I get the name for that. Export. There we go. Now I don't think, yeah, I didn't delete any of the history on my half wall, so I will just make sure that I delete the history and then just re-export that and override my wall half. Yeah, override, that's all good. And do the same thing inside Unreal. So jump back into Unreal, go to Geo, Environment. You can be really granular with this, and you can have another subfolder for walls, another subfolder for floors, and if you move stuff around after the fact of bringing it in, that's all good. Doesn't really matter. In fact, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be anal with my organization. So I'm going to have a floor. I'm going to have a wall. So I'm going to drag all my floor pieces into there. Move here. I don't want to copy them. Yep. And then my wall, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to that folder which contains all my geometry, grab my floors, my new wall sections, drag them in. Just make sure that if I go to material, untick material is good. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. And then I can drag these into the scene. There you go. So I've dragged them all in at the same time, which is a little bit of a quick way of doing it. So I selected everything, drag it all in at the same time. There we go. And then that's my wall full, that's my wall half, so I'll drag that over. And that's my wall thirds, I'll drag that over. There you go. And then I'm just going to push it back. Like that. There you go. Now you'll see that this checkerboard is actually stretched on these ones. That's because I've not done any of that UVing. Which at the beginning, when we're debugging stuff, that's perfectly fine. When we're debugging, when we're like grey boxing stuff, when we're building out environments, that's totally fine. We can sort that stuff out later on. And I'll show you why that's so cool now. Why it's so cool in relation to this anyway. So what I'm going to do is go back into Maya. I'm going to find my wall full, and I'm not going to go into the super detail about why and how I'm doing this. But what I'm going to do is essentially make my UV horizontal, so vertically makes sense, because I don't want to change the horizontal width. I want to change the vertical width, because obviously this is squashed. You know, this is a tall piece of geometry. Literally, this is squashed in half. So I want to basically extend it to give it its full width, or full height, I should say. So I'm going to unfold this across, vertical, boom. So now that's better. So now that I've done that, again, delete history, freeze transformation, just for making sure. I'm going to override my wall full, go back into Unreal, and then I'm going to right click on where it says what my static mesh wall full, and I'm going to go to re-import. And what it does, it remembers where I've dragged that information from, and it re-imports it. And now you can see there that it's actually giving me nice checkerboards, which is great. And then if I go in there and actually arrange it so my UVs are sat in the correct space. So now I'll just drag my UVs up so they're sat on the grid like that. Again, export it like that. Right click, re-import. Boom. awesome. And you can also re-import a new file as well, which will replace this with a re-import selected asset from a new source disk. So if you've done a new version of this object, but it's a different saved file, all you have to do is go to right-click New Source, and then you find that new file you've exported and replace it with that. So for instance, I could replace this with a floor, and now I've got the floor. I could go back in, replace from new source file, new wall, now it's new wall. It's so good. And again, this is across everything. If I do it inside this, inside the channel box here, the content browser here, it's across everything in the game and everything in the scene. So boom, everything gets changed at the same time. It's so good. It means that I can set up a load of... Oops, it is. Yeah, there you go. I can set up a load of these placeholders. If I know all these placeholders are going to be the same thing, I can set up all the placeholders wherever I want them, and then just replace this down here. There you go. This with the new version, and everything gets changed. It's so good. So don't worry about what I did with the UVs then and fully understanding UVs yet. Because it really doesn't matter. If the UVs are completely non-existent or just are completely rubbish, it doesn't matter right now because literally we're just getting stuff in. Okay, so now we've got some walls and some floors, which is very fun. I'm going to do one extra wall here, and this is going to be my wall quarter. Or my wall vert half. So it's SM wall vert half. So a wall that is actually half the size vertically. But again, I'm just going to do the same thing as I did before. Select both those edges. One edge going across. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do one version like that. So I'll delete this top face. Vert. Thirds. Do this. Oh, actually no. Grab my full one again. Duplicate it. Both edges. Edit mesh tools connect. It's one, and then delete that. There you go. And this is going to be my wall vert half. So, and this is what always happens to me. I always, when I'm building these environments, think, oh, you know, so I could do this. Or I actually need this actually. Oh, what if I have that just in case? I just jump in and change the original, like do a duplicate of the original, you know, shape, and you know, boom, I've got it. These aren't complex models at all. And this is why it's really good to start doing stuff like this, because it teaches you how to, one, navigate around the scene, two, create new basic objects, control the scale, control the size, control positioning, get used to moving the manipulator around, which is important, you know, getting it into Unreal. There you go. So I've got my walls, I've got my floors, it's all good. The last thing I'm going to bring in, actually, I'm going to put this inside just a general geo. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to drag in Manny. So I'm going to go up, find my Manny the mannequin. Actually, I'm going to export him from Maya. So grab Manny, again, make sure he is deleted history. All his transformations are whatevered. I'm going to export him. Yeah, I'm going to put him inside. Debug. There we go. Manny. There we go. So now I'm going to that one, so I can delete that one. Boom. That's me Unreal. Yeah. So I'm just going to drag him into like the root geometry folder. There we go. And I'm going to drag him into the scene. So boom. So that's our human scaling device. So I can move him around the scene and just make sure that does all our walls and floors make sense to a human. You know, if I actually play the game, do I make sense to this human? Yeah. So it looks like we're slightly smaller than Manny. But, you know, does these walls make sense? They do make sense. And that's why it's important for us to make these templates correct at the beginning. If you're just doing a straight up environment and you're not going to do any walk around stuff like this, you can just literally make a template, like a blank template. But because I want us to have a first person control just to kind of walk around, we're not going to use this too much. You know, we're going to end up making cameras to fly around our scene. It's all good. Another reason why this is far easier and funner than it appears is when we start making these floor plans, it's so easy for us to change our minds and decrease, increase stuff dead easy, and then hit play, see how it feels, then, you know, start again. Because we're not building this as well to get sent into another. I used to use something called Sketchfab to show stuff off, to have like portfolio pieces for work for students. There we go. But there was a file limit on that one. With this, there's no file limit, and we can make these as big as we want. The only problem with this is the bigger we make something, the more we have to make to fill it. Because if you only fill a large environment with like 2 or 3 assets, it becomes very repetitive if you're trying to scatter stuff around. And that's, again, there are tons of stuff we can do to make that actually really simple, a lot easier. So cool. So let's actually start making a kind of environment. So look, this is our debug room we're in at the minute. So debug room. I'm going to make a new level, and I'm actually going to start to plan my floor out inside there. So I've saved. In fact, I can go Control-Shift-S to make sure everything is saved. File, new level. I'm going to go to a basic because I want the lighting. So yeah, great. There you go. And then I'm going to save this level, just so we've got that saved, and we're going to call this level. So level is the thing, our actual thing we're making. The debug is basically where we're showing everything off. We're seeing all the assets. So in our level now, we're going to start to make stuff. I am just going to grab all the lighting stuff and just move it below the grid, because that's just going to get in my way. I'm also just going to shift the... No, play control can stay there, actually. So, geo, environment, floors. Let's start making something. So we would have done this ahead of time. We would have thought about a general floor plan. We've got to think about our environment, the type of environment we're making, and that's going to kind of inform this kind of setup. Now, I said I'm going to do something a bit more grander, so I'm going to do something a bit bigger. Okay. So I'm going to start off just with like full floor pieces at first. So I'm going to drag it in. Again, make sure it's set to world 0. There we go. And so I was telling you that Maya and Unreal have flipped axes. So the green axis and the y axis and z axis are flipped. So Z's actually up and Y's actually forward. So I'm going to pretend that I'm looking forward into our environment. I'm going to build in that direction. And this is pretty much my entrance. So duplicating is so easy in this as well. So I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm going to click and drag, and that automatically duplicates something. See how it's automatically duplicated my floor in there? And then I'm also going to set my unit to 100. Yeah, I'm going to set my units to 100. My unit movement here to 100, just so it jumps in much bigger jumps. Boom. And you can see how fast it is to produce these environments. So I'm holding Shift obviously to do multi-select, and I'm going to build stuff quite square at first, and then I can introduce a little bit of asymmetry and a little bit of curvature later on. So we're walking in. How does that feel at the minute? Okay, so we're walking in. It feels kind of small. Okay. So I'm going to rotate. This little blue arrow that comes out the front of the player start as well is where we actually face when we start off. So I'm going to rotate that round. So it's actually facing into the environment, and I'm going to move myself right into the doorway there. So when I start off, I'm facing in, and I'm like, okay, that looks quite small. This is meant to be a double door, I reckon, coming in. That's what I'm thinking. Or I'm looking at my design, I'm looking at my floor plan. This is meant to be a double door. This is very small for a double door. So I'm actually going to get another 2, one there, and one there. Okay. And then, yeah, I'm going to have to start really scaling these things up. I might say to myself, you know what, I actually do need a 4 meter by a 4 meter piece. Actually, let's do it. Let's jump back into Maya, because I've made that decision. I thought, you know what, I'm using a lot of small pieces, so what I'm actually going to do is make a big 4 meter by 4 meter piece. So hide Manny for now. Make a bit of geometry. I don't know why it's doing this. It's been doing. There we go. So 400 by 400 in the middle of the world. Make sure the pivot point is at the bottom left again, and I'm just gonna drag this up there. So using the exact same stuff we've been doing all throughout this. Freeze transformation, delete history. Export this. This is going into the environment geo. This is my SM floor big. I'm going to call this SM floor 4x4. And then I'm going to drag that in. I'm not going to bother making a material for it just yet. Because I'd rather just get in and start just getting stuff working. Okay, so right, okay, so this is gonna now there are things I'm going to show you. I could use the same material on this than I have somewhere else, but because this is twice the size, the material is going to be twice the size. But I can show you how to actually scale that down, so you're tiling a material over something. So if you've got a material which is meant to go on a 2 meter by 2 meter piece of flooring, obviously if I put it on that 4 meter, everything's going to double up. So I'm going to double in scale. I'm going to later on in the year, I'm going to show you how to actually set up materials so you can change the scale to be 2 meter by 2 meter, or like it'll tile over the surface. Sounds complex, really isn't. Okay, so that feels a lot more grander. Now maybe, looking at these materials, maybe this whole section that I'm putting in there, this is carpeted, and then this is all kind of marbled, or whatever, or maybe the opposite. This is carpeted and then it's marbled, whatever, you know. Okay, see how that feels now. Okay, that feels suitably big. Okay, that feels nice. Let's get some walls and let's start to enclose this off. See how it feels. So go back to environment, go to walls. Let's go to full walls, and let's start to bring these in. See, I might even do a 4 meter by 4 meter wall as well, just to help me with some of these. In fact, I'm going to be really cheeky, because that's already a 4 meter by 4 meter anyway, and I need a 4 meter by 4 meter wall. What if I duplicate this? Rotate it up 90 degrees. Oh, this is meant to be SM wall 4x4. And this is going to be SM... No, sorry, it's SM floor 4x4. This is SM wall 4x4. Yeah. Again, delete history, freeze transformations, export. Oh, make sure I get that. Make sure I get that name. So copy paste that name, export that out like that. Let's do a scene, save there, and then I can bring that in. Where's my SM4x4 wall? Oops, actually that name's wrong. There we go. Yep. 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 Do I have a break in the wall there? I have a break in the wall. There we go. So I'm holding V, remember to snap to vertex. That's probably because things aren't... you know, you gotta just be a bit careful with stuff. So that means if I do that, I've not got no break in the wall. Again, any kind of weirdness with UVs or anything, I'm not bothered about, because I can change all that later on. In fact, what I'm going to do is grab all of you. I'm going to duplicate you up. See how that feels. Okay, that feels nice and big. Now this one, I'm gonna because this is where we walk in. I'm gonna have this be a half wall here. Yeah. Where have you gone? There you are. Again, I'm just gonna Alt and Control, select all that, duplicate it over. Oh, it's because I've gone too far there. There we go. And I can start to seal that off. And then I need to bring in a half wall for that bit. Yep. So I can just duplicate that up, rotate around, bring it in. So you can see that a lot of this is, it's like just a big like Sims build your own house thing essentially, and actually very quickly you can start to get something in there. Yeah. Okay. And once again, it doesn't matter if any of my UVs right now are a bit naff, because there's nothing here, is there? Okay, so let's actually do something else. We've started getting this kind of starting to work now, but we've got our first problem. There's no door. We've got a door hole, but there's no door to go in it. So let's actually go and make a door. So I bring Manny in, and I will move that down a little bit, and I'm going to move all my walls backwards a little bit. Making it more of a fact than it needs to be. There we go. I'm just going to grab my full wall, duplicate it, bring it to the middle again, and then decide how big this door is going to be, what type of door this is going to be. Now this is where we're going to introduce ourselves to a really cool website. Now this website is called Dimensions.com and it's a website which contains loads and loads and loads of really cool things. It's all dimensions of stuff. You get a lot of IKEA furniture on here. If you're ever looking for the dimensions of chairs, cups, boxes, doors, it's all inside here. The great thing is, so we'll just click on something. We'll click on like this here, for instance. You get explanations of stuff. You get a 3D kind of explanation. You get dimensions and sizes. If we go back, we can go to this little IKEA section door here. Again, sizes, dimensions, cross section. So you can see there that there's how wide it is, all in centimeters as well, which is great. You know, there's all this information here is amazing for us, because then it takes the guesswork out of stuff. As 3D modelers, and this is the thing that kind of turns people off at first with 3D. You're not designers a lot of the time. When you're learning 3D, you can't come at it as a designer. You got to come at it as a craftsman, as a person who builds something. You got to work to scales and dimensions. If you're trying to do something that's believable, guessworking like the width of a pole on a bar stool kind of thing, you're going to get it wrong. So why not come to a place where it's going to give you that information? That takes all that kind of thinking out of the way, and then you can just make sure that that model is looking great. So it's really great for that. And also it's great for explanation. So bar clearances. So when you're building environments, you know, to make a bar actually look like it's believable, it's all this information right here, distances between chairs, distances between back bar, bar top. There's explanations of stuff here. Restaurants. There you go. So again, same thing about restaurants. Seating patterns, booths. It's all there. So we can look at... My internet today is absolutely lagging its pants off for some reason. There we go. So we can find doors, and literally just by searching doors inside here, we can find the doors, we can find all these different dimensions. Again, we've got scales, we've got depths, we've got swing ratio. So this is a door that the hinge isn't actually in the corner, it's just on the inside of the door, like here. So you can see there when it opens, it has like an internal swing and an external swing. You can see it's scaled against each other. I think it's brilliant. Like, this is absolutely fantastic. It makes our life so much easier. So if I want to have 2 of these doors swinging open into my hotel lobby, then I can find so that's 12 feet, which is 200 meters. That's okay. So I can decide how big I want my door. That's small door, that's big door. So I reckon a medium door, 2.7 meters. That's going to be like a big... Actually, no, I want to go big doors. Let's go big doors. So this is 3.66 meters. So that'll be 366 units by 57 units. I've got all my dimensions right there. So if you jump back into Maya... Now here, I'm not going to make a plane. I'm going to make a cube at first. Let's make a cube. Again, it's doing this thing. Why? There we go. Make a cube, and again, what are my dimensions? My dimensions were good job if I remembered anything. The width is 213 meters units, so 213 by 366 by 57. It's 5.7. Oh yeah, 5.7 centimeters. There you go. Yeah, 5.7 centimeters. That makes sense. Cool. And then what I can do is put the pivot point in. Now I'm not going to put the pivot point in the actual bottom corner of the vertexes. I'm going to put it in the bottom corner of the middle here. So what I'm going to do, instead of grabbing from the middle to do this, I'm still going to hold D and V, but instead of grabbing from the middle, if I do that, it's going to snap to any vertex near my mouse. But if I go D and V and only drag the x-axis, it's going to move only in the x-axis, but then snap to any vertex which aligns to that. So D and V, snap, and I'm going to drag it in line with that. So you can see that it's in the middle. And then do the same thing, D and V, and drag it down. Boom. So now I can snap that to the grid. And that's my door. super, super nice. So what would happen is, so that obviously isn't going to be right. So I need to bring in a separate big wall, 4 meter by 4 meter wall section, like that. So what that's going to mean is I've got a new problem. This actually isn't going to be 4 meters by 4 meters. This isn't going to fit. My door's not going to fit. So I've got to make a special piece of wall which is wider, because I want these big doors. I want them wider. So I could go and I've still got all my my scale parameters here. So I could decide, actually, you know what, that's too big a door. So I could change them. So I think I will do that. To keep it easy, I will do that. So I'm going to go instead. So I'm still going to keep the same depth, but my height is going to be 274. And my width is going to be 152. There we go. And then I've just got to make my pivot point in. There we go. That's better. Okay, that's better. That fits in. So now what I've got to do is make my wall a doorway, because I want these doors to open, or I might want to have these doors open, or this might be a corridor, something like that. So I've got to make sure that this is, is going to be able to fit both my doors and also possibly a door frame. So things to think about. I am going to give this a door frame, but I need to make a hole in the wall first of all. So what I'm going to do is place my door there. This is going to be SM door. Let's call it SM door. I'm going to, for now, freeze transformations, delete history, export this, get that name first, export this into my little folder. So this is douche the door. Might as well bring it into Unreal straight away, because again, I can change all this information later on if I want to. So bring that door in. It's part of my wall section, I guess. So there we go. That's my door. And I'm just going to bring it in. And how does that feel against my player? Okay, yeah, it's still a big door, but it's not like a gigantic door. Awesome. Jump back into Maya. So what I'm going to do is, just to get the scale of the door, frame, what I'm going to do is place my door in the middle of the grid, like this, like it is. Duplicate it, so Control D to get another door up. And I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees. So I've started to rotate it there. You can see that in Rotate Y, it's giving me some numbers. So 180, there we go. So that's now essentially the door footprint. That's not quite lined up. Is my thing not quite lined up? Is it on the grid? Oh, what? Hang on a minute. I need to just check something. I don't think this is quite lined up. It's not. So this is what we, need to be aware of, is this is slightly, ever so slightly off center. So I need to make sure that this is Control V, Control D, snapped. There we go. And then, so I need to just, boom, there you go. Now it's in the middle of the wall. Again, what I'll need to do is freeze transformation, delete history, export selection, override that door, and we're good. Jump into Unreal, re-import door, perfect. Right, so yeah, duplicate, rotate around 180 degrees. You'll see that the rotate Y has been affected, so I'm going to 180 degrees. So now that is going to be where my door hole is going to be. So I'm just going to make a basic door hole for now and not worry too much about like wall depth or the door frame needing to be in there yet. I'm not bothered about that yet. What I'm going to do is, I'm not even going to do any extrusions. What I'm going to do is add edges to make these holes. So I'm going to add an edge going across the middle, and that's going to become my lintel of my door, the top of my door. So connect, add that one edge in there. So with that selected, I can move that around. Now, we've already used these functions. I want to snap this in line with the top of the door. I know how to do that. I'm not going to hold D because I actually want the pivot to come with it. Hold V. That's all I'm going to do for this. I'm going to hold V and I'm going to drag up. so that the edge snaps to the top of the door. And now I'm going to add 2 divisions going down the middle that I'm going to snap on the right and the left hand side of the door. So select all the edges going down, connect, middle mouse drag to split it up into 2. Take this one, so make sure I've got the top and the bottom selected. Hold V, drag it to the right so you can see where it snaps to there. Same thing here. Hold V, snap to there. Awesome. So then I can just, well, I can delete that door. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to take this. I'm going to hold the right click button and I'm going to delete the inside of the door there. So now I've got a door hole, which is really nice. Now I'm going to make a bit of a change as well to something. Where I've been putting the pivot point in the bottom left corner of all the objects. On this is my door. So when I build this, I've just got to make sure, when I place it in, I've got to make sure that this is snapped to here instead. So I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to change anything. But I need to be aware of something. So I've made that door there, and I was just using that as a scaling, sizing thing. But now I've made my door. For now. We will change stuff later on, but for now it's perfectly fine. Make sure this is set to the middle of the grid. So holding X, drag into the middle of the grid. Deleting any history, freezing any transformations, file. Oh, this needs to have a name. What is your name? Your name is wall door double. So let's take that rogue R out. There you go. So this is my wall. It's a door. It's a double door. So, boop, file, export, youth. Go to Unreal. Oh, I'm in play mode. That's why. I'm just going to drag that in there into my walls because obviously it's part of my walls. Drag it in, and now I can start to place it in. So, is that in the right position? That looks like it's in the right position. The distance between both sides of the wall there looks okay. Now that means I need to have a half wall there and a half wall there, which is great because I have to my wall, and then I need you. I need to forget you off. Rotate round. And then now we're dealing with roofing now because now I've got to cap some stuff off. So first of all, let's have a feel for the environment. How does that feel? Okay, yeah, that feels nice. That feels suitably scaled. Cool. So one thing I've got to think about, like I said, is roofing sections. But for now, I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to do one kind of last little thing. And then we're going to call it quits in this video. Because these videos are going to be long. Every one of my videos is always long. What I'm going to do now is, in my environment, I'm going to add a new folder. And I'm going to call this... I'm going to call it support. Now this is full of, I can put all the stuff in here which I'd either put, like pillars that are obviously holding up walls and ceilings and stuff. Or I could put stuff in which are going to be like, if you have like beams that are attached to walls, like if you think of old buildings where you got like plastered walls and then you got like a wooden beam in the middle of the wall that goes up, the space is supporting I can do that kind of stuff. But what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to add I'm going to kind of, yeah, I'm going to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically just setting up a mezzanine, a balcony kind of thing. And Because I set the floor into 0, my y-axis, oh well, what would be y inside Maya is z inside Unreal, remember? That, when I lift it up to where I want it to go, is about 700. Okay, and again, I can if this doesn't work out to be right, I can always change stuff. But what I'm going to do is make a pillar like placeholder that's going to be 700 units by, I don't know, let's decide. So I'm going to move you away. I'm going to move you away. I'm going to make you go away. Make a cylinder. There we go. Don't know why it's doing that. Now, I know it's going to be, oops, wrong way. I know this is going to be 700 high, so let me make that 700. But my footprint, how big do I want this to be? So, but it's lifted up and kind of placed on the wall, on the floor. So, is it going to be? So I think the footprint of this is going to be about, the bounding box of this is going to be this 2 meter grid here, but it's not going to be the full 2 meters. I reckon I'm going to make this. So that's my radius I'm dealing with here. Oops, not that. So move my pivot pointers down a little bit. Snap to the bottom of my cylinder. So again, that's D and V, and I'm just moving the pivot point down. Holding X to snap it to grid. Holding X again to snap it to this kind of point of the grid. There we go. So yeah, I think that gives me a clearance of 75 centimeters, 25 centimeters around the outside. Yeah, actually, no, that seems a bit thick. Seems a bit big. So what I'm going to do is decrease it more. So I'm decreasing the radius here. How does that feel? That feels nice. So what's that? That's going to be 50. So my radius for that is 50. Okay. Now this, I am actually going to set this to the middle of the world. Why am I doing that? But I've not been doing that for the stuff, because all this is meant to jigsaw together, all this kind of stuff here in the back. That's all meant to jigsaw together like this, side to side. Where this is more freestanding. So this isn't meant to attach to something to make like a seamless wall. This is a thing on its own. So this is what we do for props or anything that's not a tiling thing. We just set it in the middle of the grid, on the middle of the object, at the bottom, on the floor like this. So the manipulator is set to the bottom of the object, because obviously that's got to be on the floor. In the middle of the object, because obviously that's got to be in the middle. And then we put it into the middle of the grid. Delete history, freeze transformations, export that. Oh, this needs a name. So this is going to be SM pillar. Again, when we make new ones or other ones later on, we can change the name, change the size and stuff. So I'm just going to save this out. I didn't grab the name again. Control C to grab the name, and then we could just do a quick old file export. Make sure it's FBX as per usual. Nice. And then I can drag that into my supports folder. Pillar, pillar, pillar. There's pillar. Drag you in. All the settings are the same. Boom. Drag it in. Now the great thing about this stuff is you can be really cheeky. You can make half pillars, like these embossed pillars, or you can even make quarter pillars, which are these ones, like there's little supports on the wall. They're just one pillar. That's all. It's literally just one pillar. But because the player doesn't see past the wall, they don't know. You know, I can make. Already, I'm adding a bunch of like dimension to the scene. So I'm just going to do a quick thing for this. I am going to do something here. These floors, literally, I just duplicate up them floors then, because these are all just floor sections. I'm going to make something with actual 3D depth, so that when I bring it in, it's actually got 3D depth. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to bring back up that 4 meter by 4 meter grid, because that's what I used it for. I'm going to, well, actually, I'm going to duplicate up. There we go, 4 meter grid. Now this I'm going to call floor thick. Just for now, I'm going to give it a name, floor thick. Floor thick. Because I'm going to give it thickness. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going to hit extrude, which is this button here. Extrude. It's like a little tower coming out of a white paper. And what extrude does is if you've got a face selected, it'll extrude up that face. Or if you've got a whole object selected like this, what I can do here is just have this object selected, click extrude, and then I can just bring up depth to the whole object. So what I'm going to do is bring it up by a whole unit. So that's about 50 centimeters thick. And then do that. Okay, so that's now what I'm going to bring in as my flooring for anything that is a mezzanine, a balcony, anything, because I'm going to be able to see underneath it. So this flooring, as you've probably seen, is invisible when I look through the bottom of it, back of it like this. It's also not got any thickness, it's perfectly thin. So that defeats many things. But if I need something with a bit of thickness, I need to have thickness. So what I've done is literally just made a really quick version of it. Again, grab that floor thick name. But as you've probably noticed as well, I can do all these like quick test things, and then when I'm happy with it and I can say that, right, I'm going to actually use that, just go make a better version of it. Go sort out the UVs and then literally replace this piece of geometry. You know, re-import this. Oh, did I go into walls then? Floors in it, yeah. I'd probably put, never mind, I brought in the wrong thing. I want floor thick, there you go. Boom. That's what I want. Right, so bring that in. Get it in the middle of the world. There it is, and I can just drag it over. Basically bring it into the same place. Lift it up 700 units. And then I could probably, maybe change that and then start shifting it up, like, and then maybe 5 units down. That's better. So that's like on top of, yeah, okay. So now that's 725 units. And then I can duplicate that. No, check that back. Change that back to 100. So all I'm changing here is basically the amount of distance these jump when I'm moving them. Okay, see how I feel about that. Okay, that's pretty good. Kind of nice. And then I'm going to do some quick, to round off the video, what I'm going to do is do some quick modeling, some quick flexing to show you again, just to reiterate how awesome Unreal is. So what I'm going to do is make an actual pillar. So first of all, I'm going to divide a top mantle, lintel, bottom lintel, and then middle by just splitting it off. We've done this before, so that, but then I'm going to basically scale it off. I'm going to eyeball a lot of this as well. So this top section here is going to be thinner. This bottom section here is going to be thicker. Like this. Then I'm going to bop, bop, so I can drag, make this center bit a bit thinner, like that. And then I'm just gonna make my nice soft area in the middle first. So like I said, I'm doing this kind of at speed. So don't worry about following this along at all on this one. Bit of that, bit of that, bit of that. Do a bit of this. Fancy tool. Do a bit of this. Fancy tool. Oops, daisy. Add another edge in there. Extrude this out. Bevel this. But add a segment and then change the depth. Bevel that. Add a segment, bevel it out. Do this. So let's do a little tiered thing going on. So grow that. So again, don't worry about following me because this is just me kind of speed modeling without any true direction. So that's about as wide as it's going to get. But I'll put a little thin lintel just at the bottom. And then I could just bop, bop. Now I'm also not working off a reference, and I would always say, always work off a reference. I have made many pillars in my life, so a lot of this is kind of second nature. And also a bit messy. It's not the best you're ever going to see. But I'm just proving a point. That looks nice. Okay. Now take off the top and the bottom because we actually don't need these. Because these are never going to be seen. So save myself some data and save myself some UVing. One last. And okay. There we go. Cool. Bit of a mess around. Make sure the pivot point's in the right position. Freeze transformation. Delete history. Export this. I'm going to find SM Pillar. Export over SM Pillar. Go back into Unreal. To Environment. Support. Right click SM Pillar. Import. Bang! New pillars. And then I can see how I feel about these. Which is nice. So here's another thing we can do. Actually, the very last thing I'm going to do is we've got some stuff in the scene here, but it's not necessarily what I want. So I've got these really nice pillars here, which are good. But this one, maybe I'm not so happy about it. It's got this round pillar, but it doesn't feel like it needs to be there in the back of the scene. But But what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this object, this pillar, and I'm going to call it pillar 2, whatever. Now, what's mega is, yes, I dragged these objects into the scene, and these objects are technically static meshes. These are all technically static meshes. But what I can do is also replace static meshes with static meshes. So, with this object here selected, I'm going to drag in SM2, my SM pillar 2, into the here where it says SM pillar 1. You're going to see that it's there, it's accepting it, so now that's SM pillar 2. So what I've done there is replaced it. It's still technically the same object, it looks like the same object, because all I did there was just duplicate this, so it's the same technical object. However, if I jump back into Maya, I'm going to do, again, a bit of technical modeling. Let's get rid of some of this. Ooh, actually, you know, I like that. Actually, I like that as a thing. That's a cool little thing. So I'm going to do this. Close that off. I'm going to close that off. And I have seen these kind of things in places, but I like the idea of like a pillar that ends. And then I'm going to just add another edge across here. Maybe it's a plant pot. Maybe this is where some plants might be. Some like ivy drips over the top. Oh my god, ideas are coming out. See, just because I do 3D doesn't mean I'm not a designer. So I'm going to do a bit of that. I'm going to just grab the inside of this. Do a bit of this. Do a bit of this. Okay, so that's setting something up there. That. Bevel. A nice round top kind of thing. And then just because I like the idea of doing stuff. Boop. Boop. Okay, I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. Now what I have done, because I'm dead excited, I've basically just replaced my original pillar. Then it was, you know, that was a bit of a mess around, so whatever. But every time you make a new version of something, always make sure that you're copying over. Luckily, I've got my FBX export for that, so I literally can just import it back in. I think I will do actually, just to be safe. I'll import it back in. Oh, I have to name. I'll name this pillar 2. There we go, and then I'll drag that back in. There we go. So that's my old original pillar. It wasn't coming in because they were both named the same thing. Okay, so now I'm going to export this one, pillar 2. Again, delete your history, freeze transformations, export, export selection. Oh, let me grab that name. SM pillar 2, export selection, export pillar 2. Now, I'm going to come into export pillar 2. I'm going to right click, I'm going to re-import with new file, and I'm going to find SM pillar 2. And you'll see, super awesomely, that they all get replaced. And that's because what I can do in the grand scheme of this whole level design shtick is I can just basically, if I'm making pillars, I can basically just make a big cylinder in a kind of height that I want, place them around, or like duplicate a few over. Say like, okay, I'm gonna make one of them, which is ones that run across the wall. Right, I'm gonna duplicate that in my content browser. All of these ones are going to be ones that hold up, like mezzanines, like balconies, like that. I'm gonna do another one, and this is going to be ones that, like what I've got on the wall here, are more like decorative pieces like that. And then I can set those up in the scene and place them everywhere, and everything's just going to be blocks. And then what I do in my modeling software is I model the proper versions with the right dimensions, size, UVs and stuff, export them, and then literally on each one of those I'll right click, re-import new file, I'll bring in that pillar, and then all those cubes will then change into that pillar. Next one, right click, import new file, all those will change to new. So good. So good. So you can see it's super quick and super easy. And because I've done stuff like that as well, what's to say that I can't duplicate this, get rid of this top bit, and just have SM planter. And what I'm going to do is scale it out. Scale it down to about half like that. Scale it out a little bit like that. Delete history, freeze transformations, export, get the name first. So this is a planter. So I'm going to export that. Go back into Unreal. Go to my Geo. My decorative. I'm going to drag my planter into there. Yeah. There's nothing in there. Export, selection, planter. Do you want yes, I want to replace that one. Right click, re-import. There's an issue. Oh, okay. So this is kind of, okay, so bit of a, just as I'm about to end, it's kind of thrown a bit of a curveball at me. For some reason there's an issue with this mesh, something to do with the, so I'll just do a couple of things. So I've done a couple of things in the background then. So again, don't worry about following me perfectly. But I'm going to re-export that. See, I'm having so much fun. I've probably done something and it doesn't like that I've done it. Huh. Yes, it's really... Just as I'm about to end, it starts to throw a problem at me. Export smoothing group. I've done that though, that's what I did in there. Export options. We don't have any options. Oh, have I turned something off in the thing? So yeah, we're 2 hours in. Obviously, a long video. There's just a lot of stuff to go over. A lot of stuff to go over, but I can't even delete it. Oh, you know what it is? It's because I was playing the game. I'm a fool. There we go. It's because I had the game running. What an idiot. Right, there we go. Planter. There we go. That's saying. So I've used the exact same geometry there, just messes it a little bit. It's not as simple as that, you know. I'm just being a bit cheeky with it, but you know, just for quick old checks and stuff. This whole setting up of stuff and getting the ideas for environments and blocking stuff in, and you know, there's tons of stuff we can do. There's tons of flexibility, because I can then think, oh, you know what, this is all too square. I can start to just delete some bits, rearrange some stuff, make the environment a little bit different, and it's not going to take me any time at all. Like this whole video, from me starting the video, introducing, going through some stuff, bringing stuff in, modeling stuff, explaining stuff. 2.25. Yeah, 2 hours 15 minutes. Once you get into the vibe of this and the flow of this, you can knock stuff out really fast. There we go. Yeah, you can start knocking stuff out really, really fast, and the problem then comes to control yourself, to stop yourself from making too much stuff, from giving yourself too much work. But again, these are things we're going to talk about. So that's essentially lesson 1. Look at what we can do in lesson 1. We've learned how to bring stuff into the scene in Maya. We've learned how to bring stuff into Maya, change the grid, so we're actually working on something that's useful and workable. Understand the grid scaling from Unreal and in Maya, which is both centimeters, which is easy. We've made basic flooring, so we've made a 2 meter, a 4 meter, a 2 meter, and then half and a half, and then a quarter version of those, just by doing very, very simple stuff. We've done the exact same thing for the walls. We've even made a door and a door frame stand-ins, so we're going to make better ones later on. And then we've made some basic pillars. And you literally, I've made some really kind of rubbish pillars there, but if you just use a basic cylinder at the beginning, that's all you need, because all you need is the radius and the height, and then you're good. All the rest of it becomes later on, because at the beginning, it's just about learning how to use Maya. And what's easier than flat planes? Dead easy. Everything else after that is just building upon that. So hopefully I've made that look easy, because it is easy. And obviously, yes, I am saying that having been doing this for years, and this is kind of stuff that I do sometimes just for poops and giggles. I'll just do this kind of thing and not even save it just because I like doing it. But it really is, when you get the hang of it, when you get the grip of it, it really is that easy. You've just got to take notes. You've got to take your time. You got to think clearly. You'll always hear me talking about a step-by-step approach. So step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. I need that because I'm a bit stupid. So I need to make sure I've got things written out that I can look at and go, okay, I'm doing that now. But awesome. So yeah, really fun little video. Basically covering everything that we've done in the first part of class. See you in the next one.